Hello class and welcome to Info 2106. To begin this course, we are going to first look into CMS or Content Management Systems. Now you are already familiar with HTML, creating a website using HTML and CSS to basically create the website from scratch. We learned this in Info 2105. So using HTML and CSS, you can create a website, code it from scratch. Or if you don't want to go that route, you can use the CMS to piece the pages of the website together more easily. Okay, so almost every website is made with using HTML and CSS. So you can do this by scratch or use the CMS to create these HTML and create the CMS for you. Okay, so a closer look at what a CMS does and why it is so popular. So CMS uses pre-built templates to launch websites much more quickly, and you can customize these templates to make them look more like your own. So to add your own flair and your own style, your business's own branding to it, to make it tailored more to what you need. Okay, it is much faster, of course, than coding something from scratch, than handwriting all the code in HTML or doing it page by page. Okay, it is also especially useful if for those who do not have coding knowledge. The low barrier to entry, so not having to have a lot of coding knowledge and the low cost, is very useful for startup businesses and also small companies. So why one would use the CMS? Again, a few reasons. Number one reason is for website management. Number two has to do with cost and time. Number three has to do with customization. Number four has to do with multi-user support. And five is because it allows previews and testing. Now I'm going to go over each of these points in the following slides. Okay, so the first one, website management. So a website with only a few pages will rarely need updating, okay? However, for many businesses, a more dynamic website is needed. So if you think about an e-commerce site or a website that has membership or has to update news all the time, then your web pages are constantly being updated, and having to do this by hand coding in HTML per page is not a feasible way to do so. Especially also if you have to create a large website with multiple pages. If your website has like 500 or 600 pages, then it's not quite effective to have to hand code each one of those HTML pages, right? And also if you plan on making changes or additions to your website, if you think that your website is going to grow, maybe right now you only have 10 pages, but you expect that this is going to grow quite quickly, then it would be good to use CMS. It's easier to edit existing pages as well. It's easier to publish new pages. It's easy to add an online store, create web forms. So to add any functionality using a CMS can be very, very easy and effective. Okay. Next, we are looking at cost and time. It is much faster to produce a website using CMS rather than hand coding it. Most CMS platforms come with many pre-built themes. Your website may stand out if you use these themes. You will need some knowledge of HTML and CSS if you want to customize the design. So it's always useful and always important to have that fundamental knowledge of HTML and CSS, because sometimes you will have to go in and fix something just directly in the code. So it's always handy to know. So don't worry, everything you learned in Info 2105 is still very useful, even if you only work in CMS in the future. Okay, so in comparison to HTML only websites, you'll need to design, code, set up your website from scratch, and this can be, of course, very expensive. Even if you're not doing it yourself and hiring someone else to do it, this can be very time consuming and therefore very expensive to pay for that time. Next, we're looking at customization. So making changes to a page is very easy, much easier than if you were to have to hand code it. On an HTML site, design changes are much more difficult. You have to change the pages manually and go in and change the CSS. Most CMSs have a very user-friendly interface that allows you to quickly and easily make changes to your style and to your content. Next, multi-user support. So CMS is perfect for a large website with multiple services, features, and blog. With a CMS, user accounts can be easily created, and you can assign a role like for someone to be an administrator or a contributor or just an author or an editor to each user. So it's useful to have this feature if you're always regularly updating product pages or if you're publishing blog articles on your site. Many different people doing many different tasks on one website, then you want to have this multi-user support. And finally, previews and testing. The CMS allows you to preview your website very easily and make changes very quickly. It's really cumbersome, so there's a lot of work to have to do this on an HTML-only website. So from Info 2105, you have experience doing this, right? Testing your site. It's not as easy as when you will get to work in a CMS later on in this course. You'll see how easy it is to preview your site after you have made changes or even as you're making the changes. So basically, yeah, in the HTML site, you have to copy and paste your HTML code to save it and then close it and then open it in your browser so you can preview your site and so on. So there's quite a few steps involved as compared to the very user-friendly interface in CMS, and a lot of them you can just even see the changes the very same second you make them. So a lot of talk about why a CMS is so great, but what exactly is a CMS anyways? What is content management system? Well, CMS is what helps organizations and individuals manage, create, and track content for your website. So your CMS is what makes up the back end of your website, which will then push the content to the front end that your visitor sees. So CMS provides version control and management and multi-user access, as we just talked about. It also helps in managing the text or images which are displayed on the website. Another thing that it does is it tracks the user sessions, it handles the search queries, it collects visitor feedback and comments, it can host forums on websites. Depending what kind of functionality you want to add to your CMS, it really, the sky's the limit here. Right, so we have looked at all of these. I'm just going to hammer it into you, why CMS. So starting here, no coding knowledge required, therefore lowering the barrier to entry for a lot of startup companies and businesses that want a beautiful and awesome website. Simplifies the design of the website, provides an all-inclusive internet marketing strategy, so it's easy to do analytics on your website. It's easy to push content and market your content to your audience on the website. So all the SEO plugins or SEO features are easy to install on the CMS. Really good stuff, really a great extra functionality for your website so as to help you with your marketing strategy. And also we already talked about multiple access and collaboration, because for a huge website you probably have many different authors and contributors working on the content of your site. You also have website security, which is extremely important. We talked about that in Info 2105. We'll touch upon that again later in this course. And most important and overall arching thing is it's affordable and it's time saving and it's maintenance. So I'm just going to go over the points that we just talked about in the previous slide, starting with no coding knowledge required. CMS were specifically built keeping in mind that the users have little to no previous programming experience. CMS usually comes with a WYSIWYG editor. WYSIWYG stands for what you see is what you get, which helps you manage and edit web content like images and text on the website. So this allows content contributors, so people who are experts with the content, to be able to use it very easily without having to be an expert on web development and design. Okay, so their contribution is more on the content side. They can focus on that. Okay, it becomes as simple as almost just creating a document on Microsoft Word for these users, these contributors to use the CMS. It simplifies the redesigning of the website. Designs are created separately from the content, so the old design can be easily replaced with a new design, and you won't lose any of the content, and all the old content will be restyled to reflect the new design. Multiple access and collaboration, as I talked about before, allows a number of people to have very easy access to the website. So this way, multiple users can manage, edit, update content from the website from their own computers at home or their own devices, their own phones, very easily. The CMS helps in storing all the online content and making it available to everybody who has access to the website. And website security today is very important for your website to be secure and so that it cannot be hacked. It's important for website owners, especially if you have an e-commerce business, to make sure that your website is safe and secure. CMS are regularly tested by computer scientists, experts in the field, to make sure that the websites are completely secure, as opposed to if you were to code it yourself. If you don't have that expert knowledge on web security, then you will be really lacking in that area, and this is extremely important, especially if you're doing online commerce or if you're carrying sensitive or important data from your customers or clients or members. Okay, so there are a number of plugins and tools which are also available, which can be used to increase your website security, and we'll be looking at these as we start working in a CMS later on in this course. And finally, we talked about the affordable and time-saving maintenance again, and I keep hammering this in. So maintaining a static website is expensive. You need a web developer to frequently update and make changes to maintain it. It also takes time for the updates to be seen on the website. So when you choose a CMS, this helps you save both time and money, and also ensures security. With CMS, you don't have to be dependent on a developer to make common changes or for maintaining it. It can be with, if you have good knowledge of how CMS works, and you can, very feasibly maintain it yourself to some extent. All right, so now that we have covered what CMS is, why it is better than static websites, let's take a look at different kinds of CMS that are out there. I think everybody is quite familiar with WordPress, right? The number one WordPress here pops up, and I think everybody has some kind of familiarity with it. If you haven't worked in it, I'm sure you sort of know what it is, or know somebody who has, or know websites that are made with WordPress. But there are also other players in the game. There's Joomla, there's Drupal, Typo3, and Wix. Is that a CMS? We'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, so the really three main ones I want to focus on is WordPress, Joomla, and Drupal. So those are the three key players in this game. Okay, before you decide for a client or for yourself which CMS to pick, you normally be picking between those three. Before you make any decisions, you need to ask a few questions first. It's really important to understand the goals, the vision, and the overall functionality of the website that you're going to be creating or the application that you're going to build. Okay, so first of all, ask yourself, are you building a website or an application? What kind of information are you trying to display and share here? Do you need different levels of access to the site and its content? And are there any third-party tools that you want to sync and integrate with the site, like Salesforce, MailChimp, HubSpot, and so on? And how do you want visitors to interact and engage with the site? And where do you see your site or your application growing over the next few years, like a rapid growth, or do you think it'll be quite steady? So pause and ask yourself those questions when you're looking into, picking a CMS. And the first one we're going to talk about is WordPress, okay? WordPress is the most popular CMS. It has the largest market share amongst its competitors. It's used by over 30% of the websites that are out there, which is huge. So examples are the New York Times, BBC, America, Forbes. They're all WordPress CMS websites. So working on WordPress is very easy. It can be inexpensive, and it can look very, very professional, as you can see that, even brands like New York Times and BBC American and Forbes use WordPress, so that's got to mean something, right? So posting new content and pages is very easy in WordPress, very user intuitive. It has a powerful editor for formatting the content. I use WordPress a lot. I'm very happy with it. There's also Drupal. Drupal is not as easy to use and it's more complicated than WordPress or Joomla. I've also used Drupal before. It's definitely not as intuitive, but it's got its place. It depends on the organization and the kind of like the business objectives of that organization. Drupal can be a very good match. Okay, it's considered to be far more secure than WordPress and Joomla. It is known for its scalability, its security features, and it makes it a better option for business CMS websites. Drupal is good for organizing large amounts of data and content. Drupal provides taxonomies, blocks, views, and content types, allows you to create, organize, and present data differently. Drupal user permissions and user roles are much more advanced, providing controlled access to the content. So I've worked in an organization. It was a health authority, and the security of the organization's website, it was extremely important, and there was an extreme amount, a large amount of data and content that had to be organized and customized very carefully. So the Drupal was the route that was taken, and it served the organization well. The only downside was that it wasn't as user-friendly. So when it came down to some of the contributors using it or the authors using it, depending on their skill level, it wasn't as easy to train them to use as it would be for for someone to learn WordPress. So the learning curve is just a little bit steeper, but not so bad. Okay. Drupal offers distributions, prepackaged bundles with modules and configurations to create specific types of websites. The post-installation experience for beginners is a bit complicated. So if you are thinking of using Drupal for the first time, there might be a steep learning curve, not as easy as WordPress to just kind of figure it out on your own. Users might find it difficult how to change things on the website, how to add the content is obvious, but changing the appearance and adding non-content elements is not always obvious. So use Drupal if the website you want to build have a lot of custom functionality and requires first-class security. So Drupal is more geared towards developers rather than kind of do-it-yourself users, like small business owners or startups. If you don't have the time and to kind of learn Drupal and focus on it, if you just want something to set up quickly, then Drupal is not for you. There's a lot of custom work and coding that will be required to achieve your final desired effect with Drupal, but it will be worth it if that is the route you want to take. Right, so I mentioned security. Both WordPress and Drupal are secure CMS solutions. So I mentioned that Drupal is more secure than WordPress. That is true, but it doesn't mean that WordPress is not secure. Okay, it's just due to the way that websites are built, customized, and extended on each platform, Drupal is more secure. It's not the core of WordPress that is the problem. It's the themes, actually the user habits and mistakes that users do that are more commonly seen with WordPress users just due to the way the platforms work. Okay, so the real problem with security is has to do with the WordPress plugins, which means the extra functionality that people add onto the basic WordPress website. The main issue is that WordPress sites stem from the vulnerability that's created when third-party plugins are uploaded. So when you add third-party plugins, meaning third-party functionality, apps, and you add it to your WordPress site, the core of the WordPress site, which is secure, but the plugins aren't secure, then this can pose a threat. This can cause problems. WordSite themes are preloaded with many unused plugins that reduce response and increase security vulnerabilities. So each time a plugin is uploaded to WordPress, the site becomes vulnerable to potentially malicious code from non-verified third parties. There are ways to get around it, and we'll learn more about this later on in the course. But basically, because Drupal themes and modules are covered by an internal security program, it makes it really difficult to smuggle malicious code, so therefore they're less susceptible to security vulnerabilities. You can see here, WordPress security infected website platform distribution 2018, not too long ago. Whoa, so much for WordPress, right? 90% here and the rest so much less. But it's a little bit unfair, this graph that I showed you. It does say that around 90% of all infected CMS websites run on WordPress. This low score of WordPress security is due to a few factors. First of all, it's just simply the most popular CMS on the web. So of course it will receive a much bigger piece of pie, of the hacking pie, just because it's just so popular, more people use it, of course it will be hacked more. And also, since many sites run on WordPress, hacking into WordPress yields a higher kind of ROI for attackers. It's just more benefits for them to attack a WordPress site than other sites. So investing in building an exploit for WordPress can result into breaking into thousands of sites, rather than focusing on the much smaller number of Joomla or Drupal. So of course, hackers would be more interested in WordPress sites to hack just because they are so much more popular. However, Drupal and Joomla are hacked into proportionately less than WordPress. Even having said this, proportionately, WordPress is still being hacked into a lot more. So the security, therefore, is one of the main selling points of Drupal. Many government agencies, that's what I worked for before, a government health authority agency, and a lot of other institutions have trusted Drupal chiefly because of its strong focus on website security. So in general, WordPress is ideal for small and medium businesses, as WordPress offers many themes, plugins, and options for integrations. It's good to use as it is. You need to customize the layout, the functionality. It can prove to be more difficult and cost more. So if you're happy to use it as it is, plus a little bit more, then go with WordPress. But if you need to change it a lot, then you might want to spend the time and effort in using Drupal. Okay, Drupal is a great option for those looking to build an enterprise level solution or a site that contains multiple forms of content, features, functionality, and integrations. Drupal can handle multiple rows, integration, content, complex configuration requirements, which is all good for good customer experience. Okay, so WordPress offers 5,000 plus themes and 53,000 plus plugins. Don't worry, you don't have to remember these numbers for your exams or anything, but I just want to show you how much more it offers in terms of selection. Drupal offers half that many, so 2,500 plus themes and a little bit less number of plugins. Okay, most of which are free. Right, so next we're going to talk about Joomla. So Joomla is somewhere in the middle between WordPress and Drupal. It delivers a lot of user-facing features, but also allows you to custom code the non-standard elements. It has more advanced user management scheme. It can be handy if your website is managed by multiple people. Again, Joomla's learning curve is also quite steep. So Joomla is the second most used content management system. Okay, it may not be as user-friendly as WordPress. It's a CMS that also allows you to build web pages without having to know coding. So if you don't know coding, that's fine. You can still use Joomla for your website. Joomla offers multilingual support, which saves you from having to use plugins or extensions for adding languages to your website later. Okay, you can also use more than one template or themes at the same time for the same website, use for a different type of content, and this is great. So if you have your core website, your basic website, and then on top of that you have a store website, so for that part of the website you can use a different theme, and then if you have like another side of your website for members or something like that for them to sign in and use, and then you want that to have a different style as well, you can apply a different style, a different theme to it. So just like WordPress, Joomla also comes with templates and extensions. The quantity of these templates and extensions is not as high. So this could make finding the perfect template and perfect extensions a little bit difficult because it's just less selection. It doesn't have a feature that would allow users to search and install extensions or templates from the administrative area, which can be a bit of a pain. Anyway, so that sums it up for Joomla. So let's take a look at all three of them side by side. All three of them are written primarily in PHP. They all support MySQL as their database management system. WordPress exclusively supports only MySQL, but Joomla and Drupal support other database management systems as well. All three of them use themes and templates for visual appearance of sites. And then they also use plugins, modules, or extensions. Okay, they're all called different things, but what they are is they extend features. So plugins, modules, and extensions. Joomla and Drupal are more developer-centered and do expect you to be reasonably comfortable with working with HTML and PHP. So if you want to build more custom-looking and custom operating website, you need to know HTML and PHP to work with Joomla and Drupal. Additional features. Each of the best CMS here offers its own spin on installing new features. So WordPress calls, these new features, as I mentioned just now, plugins. Joomla calls them extensions. Drupal calls them modules. So when you want to add a functionality, in WordPress, you have to add a plugin. In Joomla, you have to add an extension. In Drupal, you have to add a module. So WordPress offers the biggest number of plugins, and these plugins are the most user-facing. So here are some numbers. So 50,000 plugins for WordPress. There are thousands more available from third-party developers, so even more than 50,000 actually. There's about 8,000 for Joomla and 44,000 for Drupal. So Joomla is kind of in the back there, not so many. Okay, so in that department, WordPress wins the race. All right, so again, the question is then, which one do I pick, Drupal or WordPress? So here's a cheat sheet to kind of help you decide quickly. So are you looking for a robust and complex solution? Yes, then pick Drupal. If your needs are complex and your website requires robust functionality, then use Drupal from the start. It takes longer to develop, but it will be worth the time and the effort and the cost. But if you're looking for a low-cost initial and ongoing investment, then use WordPress. WordPress is affordable and allows for some customization. If you're just creating a marketing site or you're not sure what the future is going to bring, start with WordPress. You can always add to it. It's a good way to kind of test it out. Okay, so if you value usability over custom functionality, usability means if you want something that's easy to use WordPress. WordPress is easy to use website with out of the box functionality. Is security a key requirement? Do you want the most secure CMS out there? Then choose Drupal. Because WordPress sites, like I said, are more targeted than Drupal. WordPress themes and plugins are also less secure than Drupal. So if your security is a key thing, then you should pick Drupal. All right, so the other ones I mentioned, there's also Typo3. It's not a very popular CMS, in comparison to WordPress or Drupal or Joomla. The main differentiating point between Typo3 and other CMSs is its scalability. It really caters to a niche like enterprise level websites. So it's for a CMS for developing an intranet, basically. Typo3 would be the right choice. Okay, it offers multilingual support and also supports running websites from multiple websites from one single installation. So it's really aimed at website developers, or again, people who have experience in web development. And next is Wix, and I had a question mark beside Wix in the beginning. So Wix is actually, I added it in here because I believe some people probably have some experience with Wix or something like Wix. Wix is not a CMS, so I just don't want you to be confused about things like Wix. Wix is actually a website builder, which is not a CMS. It can be used to build websites without coding knowledge, but it's not a CMS, okay? That's Wix. We're not referring to Wix and website builders when we talk about CMS. Okay, so Wix is a web builder, not a CMS, because Wix is hosted, which means that the site it sits, which means that websites are built within their system, and the technology is maintained by Wix as part of the subscription. Okay, so it's more like a subscription. Wix can be highly extended using their development tools with a knowledge of JavaScript. And Wix has the advantages of potentially having better security and so on. But one thing you have to remember is that it is not yours. It's sort of like renting that website. So it's not the same as having a CMS. All right, so what are the differences again? CMS versus website builders. CMS lets you create, store, search, and manage content, which is typically stored in a SQL database. So you have control over basically every element, and it's not limited to a specific host. You can pick it up and move it to another host. You can move it around to different hosts. Okay, website builders use proprietary tools that only work on their platform to build the pages. So you have it as long as you're subscribing to them, but you cannot pick it up and move it somewhere else. So the greatest strength is the ease of use, very easy to use, and you don't need to worry about what's going on behind the scenes. You don't need to worry about maintenance, security, all, the website builder is responsible for that. Okay, so if you're trying to decide whether you need a website builder or CMS like WordPress, so Wix or WordPress. So Wix is a good solution if you have a smaller or one-man business. If you just want a quick little website too, because you are knitting and you sell sweaters and you just want a quick little website, a fast little website to do that, then maybe, Wix might be a good solution. The ease of use makes it a good option for some people. However, it's a fully hosted service and it comes with a lot of limitations. So if you subscribe to Wix and then you realize you can't quite customize it the way you want it to, you kind of, that's just the way it is. That's what you're limited to, right? You're not going to be able to do whatever you want with it. There's also something called WordPress.com, okay? So when talking about WordPress, there's actually two things, WordPress.org and WordPress.com. So let's start with WordPress.org first. WordPress.org is like the CMS, so it's where you find the free WordPress software, so all the files that you need to, create, install and configure the WordPress site. You go to WordPress.org and this is where you can download and install on your own server to create a website. So with WordPress.org, you have to host your own blog or website. WordPress.com takes care of all the web hosting for you. WordPress.org, if you download the sites and you install and configure on your own, you're responsible for getting that server space, finding that host, getting your own domain, things like that. You have to host. You're responsible for all of that. WordPress.com on the other side is more like Wix, where it takes care of all the web hosting for you. You don't have to download anything. You don't even have to pay for hosting or manage a web server. However, you'll be required to create an account on WordPress.com, and the limitation is that yes, you get that space for free, quote unquote free, but it's very limited. You won't get a lot of space, and you have ads on your website, and and if you want to do anything like customize it, you're very limited into how much you can customize, and you probably have to pay to get an upgrade, to change it, to make it look like what you want it to look like. And if you want to add plugins, to add an online store or add a form page, then you have to pay. Okay, so if you just want a very, very basic site, WordPress.com is good, but if you want to start adding things, you're going to have to start paying, which doesn't mean that it's not the right solution. Maybe it's still worth paying for these extra features because of the other benefits that you get. Like you don't have to pay for hosting, you don't have to manage a web server, everything's taken care of for you. It might still be the right solution. Okay, so WordPress.com offers both the free and premium plans. The free plan it really is 100% free, no strings attached. You can set up as many as you want for as long as you want. But you have to set it up on WordPress.com subdomain. So it would be your website name and then WordPress.com. So WordPress.com will always be a part of your URL. And you can use up to 3 gigabytes of disk space. And like I said, you're going to have WordPress.com's own ads throughout your site. So if you want something professional looking, you probably don't want the free site with the ads all over your site. Your website will display ads on each page if you're on a free plan, so this doesn't look very professional. You get a premium plan from anywhere from $4 to $45 a month, and they come with different levels of features and perks, right? All right, so that's all I have for today's CMS PowerPoint. It's a little bit over half an hour. So on this page, I have my list of sources. That's where I got my information that I pulled together for this PowerPoint. I hope you found it informative, and now you can move on to your class activity.